Most people think you need millions to retire comfortably. But what if I told you a simple 5 fund portfolio could generate nearly 10% yield? Enough to cover your expenses with as little as $250,000. Today I'm going to show you exactly what retirement could look like at $250,000, $500,000, and $1 million with this powerful ETF blend. So stay tuned. Welcome back to Simply Money. For those who have watched the channel before, I've done this type of scenario where we look at a portfolio, what kind of yield that it's providing, and the starting balance, and how long it should last. We put in estimated Social Security amounts for single or dual income earners, so we can look at different scenarios here. Today we're going to be looking at a fund that is comprised of, as you can see right here, QQQI, making up 20%. So the amount isn't going to be the same on each one of these. I'm going to do 250,000, $500,000, and $1 million, but the percentage is going to be the same. So QQQI will be 20%. IWMI, which is a Russell 2000 fund, is going to make up 20%. SPYI is 20%. SCHD is 30%, and SCHG is 10%. We're getting a blend of about 9.28% on the yield. We're going to look at some things with this. Let's start right up here. We put in the starting balance. We're going to put in $250,000, and we're going to say that we need $60,000 a year. As you can see right off the bat, that does not work out too well in this scenario, but we have to change some other elements up here. $250,000 trying to take out $60,000 a year is not going to work very well. Let's just look at these couple things. We're going with an annual return of rate of 4%. But if you look at this based on the history, the annual return on these would be close to 7.5% to 8%. And that's before dividends. That's just the appreciation. Because you have something like SCHG, which is appreciating on average about 15%. You have SCHD, which is growing about 7 or 8%. These others are growing slightly. So your averages comes out to about 7.5% to 8%. I went on the conservative level of an annual return on the growth of the funds because we do have covered calls, higher yield. I went on the conservative level of 4%. We're going to keep that there. We're going with inflation at 3%. We're going to keep this at 30 years. And we want it inflation adjusted, so we have the yes there. The yield that we're pulling off of this is 9.28. You can see that right here. So that you have the $250,000 balance. You need $60,000. The dividend payment off of that is $23,200, which means that you have to withdraw an additional $36,800 from this account, which is way too high for this. We don't even get down hardly into using Social Security. We're about 4 years in when our fund runs dry. I have these at pretty low levels of $15,000 and $7,500. If we put that up to what is more average, say $18,000, and just go $9,000 here, it helps out slightly. So it doesn't really impact it. We're going to look at that. But with the $250,000, we have to get this to extend much further down. So the only thing we can change on this in this portfolio is putting this down to, let's try 45,000. Okay, so as you can see, as we reduce this down to 45,000, that brings us to a place where this is sustainable. Again, that's with an $18,000 and a $9,000 Social Security from two people kicking in at 62, and 2 years later at the original person would be 64. It's going with the spouse being 2 years younger. We can change these numbers based on your age and maybe your spouse's age to where they start with that. I have it set up at 62. The younger spouse is 2 years younger. And then the year we're starting is at age 58 for the oldest person. Again, we could put that at 62, and you see that extends it even more. But 62, let's go back to 60,000. Okay, now we get a little bit further down there. We're getting to where we're 85. taking out $60,000. And we'll look at some of this other information in a minute. I'm just getting a feel of this with you. I haven't done this in advance, so I'm kind of walking through this with you. 60,000 is still pushing it pretty heavy with these two Social Security starting at age 62. So if you waited to retire when you were 62 and you had $250,000 and you needed 60,000, you'd be okay. It'd be tight. You're looking at 85. I don't know that I want to plan on that I'm going to be kicking the bucket, or both, actually, my wife and I kicking the bucket by 85. What if we just adjusted this a little? Let's go down to $56,000. We make a slight adjustment, and that gets us to 102. I think we can feel a little safer there. We don't want to cut out quite as much. Let's go to 58,000. And again, we're running out now at 95, 94. I feel a little bit better about that. So you can kind of get a feel here of, at $250,000, where it would take you, and you can play with these numbers. And again, this is with a conservative 4% growth rate. I have no idea what your Social Security would be here. So you have to kind of play with that yourself and know what that would do for you. So if you have suggestions, you have information you want to know, hit that in the comments. Let me know. Put this amount in with these ages and with this amount of Social Security, and I'll run another scenario for you, and we'll do another video just for you. Just put that in the comments. I'll dedicate the next video that I do like this for you. Let's look at this now that we kind of have it set to where we can live till 94 before we run out of money. So we feel pretty good about that. We're going to retire at 62 on this scenario. Just looking at what this does, you can see that at 62, you have the $250,000 balance. You need $58,000. You're getting $23,200 in dividends, $18,000 from the first Social Security. The second one hasn't kicked in yet. So you have a total income of $41,200. You have to withdraw $16,800. That brings our balance down to $242,000. Coming to the next year, you start at that $242,000. You have inflation, so now your income need is $59,740. You need dividend payment comes out at $22,507. Your Social Security is inflation adjusted, still not a second one yet. So you can see this one is pulling a little bit heavier. But this third year, even though we start lower, we need a little bit more. Our dividend's a little lower, but we have this Social Security kicking up a little bit. And now we add in the second Social Security. Now we only have to withdraw $10,000. And this is on a $250,000 portfolio with these Social Security amounts. If you have a higher Social Security amount, this would work out even better for you. Let's bump this up now for experiment to the $500,000. You have a portfolio of $500,000. We're going to keep everything the same for now. You can see that at 62, if you retire, you're living to 102, you're passing on $4.5 million because you are not even denting this. So if you're in the same scenario but have twice the amount of money, you can do two things. You can increase your spending to enjoy life a little bit more. So let's go up to $75,000, see what that does. Still in great shape. We could, let's say we want to do extensive traveling, taking great trips. With $500,000, now we're looking at what they call spending down, dying with zero, or whatever you want to call it. You're looking at 99 before you're running out of money. So we feel pretty good about that. We could run with this. Again, your withdrawals are at a decent amount here early on. But what I want to do is, let's go back down. We'll put it down to more reasonable where we started originally at 60,000. But guess what? We don't want to work till we're 62. When can we retire? Let's try 55. With 500,000 needing 60,000, with these Social Securities kicking in at 62 and 64, you could safely say you could retire at 55. Now, again, this doesn't take in tax implications. I run all these without taxes, so 60,000 is your gross. You need to back out your taxes. But how are you being taxed? You have qualified dividends with SCHD. You have some return of capital with QQQI. There's different tax implications. You have to understand where that's at. Mine's in a Roth, so I have zero tax implication on mine. So when I run these, I run it based on that. You're going to have to work out your own tax implications because there's way too many scenarios on if there's other income, what kind of fund you're holding it in or account you're holding it in. So those are things we have to look at. I just want to show you what it could look like with $500,000. You could comfortably retire at 55 on $60,000 a year. Now let's bump that up. Say I'm retiring early. I'm young still. I want to do a lot more. Let's go up to 70,000 and see what happens. We're starting to see a dip here later, but that's okay. We're probably going to slow down some of the traveling. If we put an extra 10 grand in for travels, maybe we're going to go 80,000. Here, we wouldn't want to be able to sustain that from 55 would get us to 76. So 80,000 is really pushing it too hard. And we would want to make sure that we're not doing that. That's where a dynamic approach, like the 4% rule says, take 4% out, and then you can increase it by the amount of inflation year over year. I don't like that. It's a good guideline. It's a good starting point maybe to give you a ballpark, especially if you're planning far out and you don't have this planned yet. But using a more dynamic approach, when the market's up, you can pull a little bit more out. If I'm in retirement with $500,000 and I have an extra 10 grand that I'm putting in my budget for fun, for traveling and things of that nature, and the market starts tanking, we go into a recession, a 2 or 3 year downturn, maybe I cut that back down to 65,000 or even 60,000 for a year or two. Maybe we say, we're not going to travel quite as much this year, or we're going to do a little bit more economical entertainment, whatever the case might be. Now, if this is a hard and dry budget, like you have no wiggle room, you have to look at this a lot more closely. How comfortable would you be? But this is starting at 55. Go back up to just even 60, retiring early at 60, at $70,000. You're having no issues with this. And again, this is based on these Social Securities. Yours may be higher or lower. You have to figure that out. And again, this is that portfolio of that 5 funds that I shared earlier and what percentage this 500,000 would be in each of those. So the last scenario we're going to look at is the $1 million portfolio. Everybody says that's what you need. You need $1 million to be able to retire. Okay, so with this portfolio balance, and let me stop here and clarify, this isn't financial advice. I'm not telling you to go put all your money in these 5 funds. You have to make your own decisions. This is for educational, informational purposes only, but you have to make your decision. I'm showing you what this fund could do based on past performance. We don't know what it's going to do in the future, so this performance may be better, it may be worse, but we're using this as guidelines. $1 million portfolio at 60 years old, taking $70,000, you can see you have way more than you'll ever need. Let's say, okay, we're going to do a really fancy, lots of traveling, or I live in a higher cost of living area. I need more than the other people that can make it on $60,000 living in the Midwest or somewhere. Okay, so at $90,000 a year, you're still looking really, really healthy. And that's retiring at 60. So let's say at 55, I have $1 million. I want to retire, taking out $90,000 a year. You got to look, your dividend payment on this is $92,800. So you're already meeting that without your Social Security kicking in. What this chart does, and it did it on all of them, I didn't point this out on all of the funds, but when you get to the point where you're like here, you had to withdraw money because you were just a little bit below what your income need was. But down here, go a little bit further, you're starting to put deposits in because Social Security kicks in, and so you're having more. I have it that you're putting deposits in, but basically you wouldn't take the full 9.28% distribution. You have your $18,000, then instead of taking the entire $108,000 distribution, you would only take what you need for the difference. That would leave an additional $16,000 of the distribution that you could reinvest, and that's where that power of where it keeps compounding even while you're retired. That's a $90,000 income first year going up by 3%. As you can see, at 70 years old, you're up to $140,000 to keep the same buying power. That's what this portfolio could do. And this is an example for you to just look at, do some research, And to consider that, again, you have to make your own decisions. I want to go down here a little bit lower, let's say 50 years old. Could someone at 50 years old with $1 million, and for some people they're thinking, wow, $1 million, that's so much money. And you have other people, and I pick on Susie Orman all the time because she's got some articles, I actually did a video, you can check it out on the channel, where she says you need $5 million really to retire. That in our world and with all the uncertainty, you need $5 million. But in the same article, she talks about her beach home that costs several $1,000,000 and her apartment, and I think it's in New York, that costs multi-million dollars. Sure, if you have that type of issue and that type of income need, then you might need $5 million. But I'm talking to you, the everyday person. Leave down in the comments, what do you think you need for retirement? At 50 years old with $1 million, you're still good to go. This is an example for you to look at. I appreciate you joining me today. Put a link to this so you can view it down in the description. Feel free to take a look at that. I appreciate you being with me today on Simply Money, and we'll see you next time.